Recovery is stupendous.
Achievable.
Hope.
Freedom.
Empowering.
It's unique to everyone.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Getting a new lease on life.
It's finding restoration after you fall down.
Recovery is having the freedom to enjoy life.
For me, it was finding a way to really love myself.
My recovery is possible in part because of my own sense of purpose.
Welcome to Montana's Peer Network Recovery Talks podcast. I'm Jim Haney. I want to welcome you to another Recovery Roundtable. We are doing this series on the 10 guiding principles, and today we're going to be talking about person-driven recovery, why that's important, sharing our own personal experiences. I have two special guests here with me. Please introduce yourselves.
My name's Ashley McLean. I am the Recovery Coach Supervisor for Montana's Peer Network.
And I'm Bill Devil, Montana Peer Network Peer Support Specialist.
Well, thanks so much for joining me today on another Recovery Roundtable. Person-driven recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think back to, when I first got into the work of peer support and we were asked to pick the top two. And I know that this was one of my top two.
Oh, really?
It was.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm to the listener. I'm laughing because I was the instructor in that class.
Yeah. You don't remember, Jim?
One of the exercises we have people do. So person-driven. So why did you pick?
Well, I go back and I think about all the times. So I come from a background of my dad is a licensed addiction counselor. He was, and had been in the field my whole life. And I was the golden child.
Okay. And
I chose, a life of addiction and alcoholism and all of that stuff. And I remember the first sign of that, him wanting me to get better. And I did not see it as a problem, And
Sure.
So it was always to appease other people. If I did this, then I would get them off my back. And it was never this internal drive, okay, you need to do something different, Ashley. It was always, you need to do something different because then these people who you love and care about will be off your back, and then you can go back to doing what you always did, And so, the things that I did in my journey, I still consider it a recovery journey because it was a lot of experimenting to find out what worked. Mm-hmm. But it was any recovery elements or any attempt at that was never internally my want. It was for somebody else until this last time. So.
I feel like you were doing it for other people.
Oh, yeah. I was doing it for other people. Every time. Except for this time.
Yeah, I know. I can relate to that a little bit because my journey finding recovery was definitely not person-driven. It was definitely court-ordered. Now,
court-driven.
It was court-driven. You will do this and you will do that, mental health, 12-step meetings. However, that gave me the ability for it to become person-driven, but that still took a while for that to happen. And I think that is something also for me in my own life that starts out small. I'm real simplistic. When it's court-ordered, there's no thought process. I just do. Mm-hmm. I just do what I'm supposed to do, check the box off. All right, I'm safe. When it becomes person-driven, then I have to take accountability for it and responsibility for it. And so I know for me in my recovery journey, person-driven had to grow, and it grew at a fairly slow rate. But ultimately, I am responsible for my recovery. Mm. If I don't do it, nobody else will do it for me.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Person-driven, for me, I think is about that voice and choice. Having voice in my recovery and having choices And it wasn't anything conscious that I, in the early days was like, oh, I need to have a voice in my recovery.
Right.
But I remember, having this conversation with, I was going to outpatient, I was going to mental health, and, in the outpatient, you have that requirement, the 12-step, 2 meetings plus your 9 hours, right? Mm-hmm. And I had been going to 12-step meetings, and because of my suicide attempt and being hospitalized, the hospital gave me some resources, and one of the resources was a group called Rational Recovery, which then sort of evolved and became Smart Recovery today. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I went to one of these meetings, and it was like, whoa, this is totally different. And I wanted to do that as one of my 2. I wanted to go to my 12-step, but then I wanted to go to this other one. And I remember that was a big deal to the treatment facility. And that well, what's this rational recovery thing? It's not, it's not 12-step based. But I was learning because it was relating more to the mental health side for me, because it was based in, I think, CBT, right? And so it was it was really connecting to what I was doing in therapy at the mental health center. And I remember having to really speak up multiple times. They weren't going to accept it. And I think for a while, I probably did 3 meetings because I did my 2 12-step. And then eventually they did relent and allow me to do it. But I don't think I consciously said, I need to have my voice heard. Right. But I did speak up.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah, I was speaking up because the rational recovery was just so different, just walking in, and just their approach. It was more strength-based. And so it just appealed to me, and I wanted that to be part of my recovery. So that's where Person Driven for me is all about giving people voice and choice. And and then when I became a peer supporter, that was my approach with other people was, here's the deck of cards of recovery that I'm aware of. Choose what you want. There's 50 choices.
Yeah, I love that. I can think back to my mentors that I've had along the way, and every one of them, when it came to recovery, they never said, Ashley, you have to. They never said you have to do this. They just said, here's what you have, and here's what this is going to do. Here's what this is going to do. Here's what this is going to do. You decide. You're an adult. Yeah. You decide. I think back to and I say mentors. I mean not counselors or treatment teams or stuff like that.
Understood.
It's mentors in my life. They never made me do anything, and I think there was some personal buy-in on my part when I made that choice, and I got through it. And I did that, and I felt accomplished, and I felt pride, and I felt yes, that was. Yeah. That's what I'm going to do. This is the way I'm going to go, and it just got easier to make those decisions in recovery. Mm-hmm. I felt my own empowerment through my mentors telling me, I'm never going to tell you what to do, right, but here is some suggestions. This is what you can do.
I think for me, in my work that I do today is to be able to encourage and remind people that they do have a choice.
Yes, absolutely.
Because sometimes they think they have to follow a system or they have to follow a set way. And, on some of the objections that people have on, well, I have to take my meds and I have to do this and I have to do that, I'll remind them that they do have a choice, but there's consequences to those choices as well. And I said, right, well, if you don't go to therapy twice a week, like's been suggested to you, and you say you have to do it, what are the results if you don't go to therapy? What happens in your day-to-day life that is negative, or what's the positive of that? Mm-hmm. And so I always make sure that even though people need to be reminded that they have choices to make in their own recovery, that those choices have consequences to them, some positive, some negative, but let's be mindful of what those things are, and we don't always have to be afraid not to try one of them.
Right.
It doesn't always have to be an absolute. It can be, I'm thinking I'm going to try it this way, and we need to be able to be supportive in that decision with putting some safety nets in place and say, well, I remember when I chose to go off medication. Now, it wasn't something that was thought out or anything. It was something where I went to take my meds and I had 2 refills and a half a bottle, and I'm like, I never intended not to take all my meds when I was supposed to take my meds, but it was something that was thought out. I mean, I told my employer, I told my mom and dad, I told my girlfriend at the time, I told my brother. And then I went to my provider and I let them know, and they were like, are you sure you want to do this? And my parents were like, it's been working. Why do you want to change something that's been working?
Yes.
And so, it was a big decision, but I had safety mechanisms in place to be able to make that choice. And I can for sure tell you that my mom and dad were like, well, you need to get back on your meds and you need to make sure you take them on time, because there was success there and there wasn't anything going wrong. But I let everybody know what I was doing. And so I was able to make a personal choice there. Sometimes that gets tricky for me because I can manipulate myself so easily if I don't allow myself to be held accountable to the people that care most about me that are around me. I think recovery is something that is person driven, but also we know that the effects of people that aren't in recovery run really deep to their sphere of influence.
Yeah.
So I like to make sure that I'm accountable to those around me if I'm making my own choices in my recovery, which I'm ultimately responsible for, to get input from.
I love what you said there, Bill, about for me to be accountable to, right? Not someone else to hold me accountable.
Right.
Like it's like I'm driven and I have this personal choice to seek out these people who maybe have done it before me, who like I look up to, and I need a little bit of help, but I'm seeking that, right? Like I'm saying, I need to be accountable to you, right? And not, I need you to hold me accountable, right?
Yeah. Well, that's my hang up with the criminal justice system, right? And I saw this firsthand when I was in that outpatient program. So I'm in the intensive, 9-hour-a-week thing, three days a week, 3 classes, do your 2 groups, right? I'm the only person who checked themselves in. Every other person in my group for the entire time I went there, I mean, we're talking a lot of people went in and out of that group. They're all court ordered. And the reason they're out of the group is because they relapsed. Yeah. And that's an automatic, out the door you go, and we take away your license, we throw you in jail, and we create this whole new batch of problems you got to deal with. And I saw that wasn't working even then when I was unhealthy. These people just rotating through this program. Like every week there were people, where's so-and-so? Oh, well, he didn't pass his test. Oh, well, he didn't pass his UA. She's out, like, holy cow. Like, that doesn't really work when someone else, because that's what you're saying, Ashley, right? Is someone else is making you accountable. You're not taking any of the responsibility or making any of the decisions, right?
No.
And I think there has to be ownership and personal responsibility about
personal drive to right. I'm going to be accountable to this. Right.
Exactly.
And until that happens, I didn't think recovery was ever going to be possible for me. Yeah. In my experience with the work that I do in my personal life and my professional life, I see that also a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, Bill, you said that when they said to you, why do you want to go off your meds? You know, it's working. I totally had that experience with my psychiatrist. I remember sitting in the mental health center, you know, this person you've been seeing for, you know, many years, and having that conversation saying, you know, I'm thinking about going off my meds, and it said the exact same thing that you said to you. Why do you want to do that? It's working, you know. And I don't know. To this day, I don't know where that came from in me, but there was something that was saying you should give this a try.
Yeah.
And then you have something to fall back on if it doesn't work, right? Like
you know.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it is it's okay to make a decision that you think's going to be good for your recovery, knowing that if it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean that it's a failure.
Mm-hmm.
It means that you tried something and it's either going to work and it's going to improve the quality of your life, or it's not going to work, but you know how to correct it. And so that's where I was at. And like I was saying before, I just kind of stumbled onto that one day when I have 2 full bottles and half of another bottle, and I didn't take my meds today, and I go to take it, and I'm like, why do I have all these meds? It wasn't an intentional thing, but it got me thinking, would I be okay without them? And so, and I was concerned about it as well. It's like, it has been working, and I don't self-medicate anymore, and the obsession is gone, and my episodes from my mental health symptoms are way down and less invasive. And so why would I want to change this?
Yeah.
And so, but I tried it and it seemed to work, and I still have my mental health episodes. When they happen, I have tools that are available to me.
Right.
I recognize them. I understand them. They don't interrupt my daily living that much. My wife gets irritated with me sometimes when I'm carrying on with myself, but
yeah,
I know how to manage all those things. And I think for me, going through the mental health system and utilizing them for what was required for me was essential for me to be able to even attempt not having to be on my meds, because I know signs, I know symptoms. I did the whole RAP deal.
Yeah.
My wife knows about the whole RAP deal. So, and that's a part of being willing to be open and honest about where you're at and what you're doing.
Right.
And that empowers you to be able to be person driven.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I did this little exercise where I have this jar of positive thoughts. They're called positive thoughts. And you just pull a card out, and it's super random. But the one I got the other day was, I'd rather have a life of oh wells than what ifs. And is
nice.
Like, that's really what made me like think about this, is like being person driven is like taking that leap and saying, you know what, I'm just going to do this, and oh well if it doesn't work out, right? Like, rather than like, gosh, I wish I could do that, or like that seems really cool, and like, what if,
right?
If only I
would have, right? Like,
yeah.
But just experiencing all these new things, like, they've always turned out to be way better than I ever thought they would be in my head.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, this has been a great conversation around person-driven recovery. Good job, Ashley. This was a good
It's
one.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. And thank you, the listener, for tuning in once again. Please catch all of our episodes on the 10 guiding principles in the Recovery Roundtable, and take care of yourself out there.
Yeah.
Take care, guys.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works. Recovery is possible.
Recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery is possible.